Do you see what's happening?
Mindestens 6 Dörfer sollen vollständig zerstört worden sein.
Blutvergießen in Boulder ist der zweite Amoklauf innerhalb einer Woche.
Das Sturmtief Daniel hatte am Sonntag die heftigsten Regenfälle seit 40 Jahren.
Sind mehr als 10.000 Menschen getötet worden, darunter seien 4.000 Kinder.
Beim schwersten Zugunglück in Indien sind fast 300 Menschen ums Leben gekommen.
Die Zahl der Opfer nach dem verheerenden Erdbeben unaufhaltsam an. Inzwischen wurden mehr als 2.000 Tote gemeldet.
Die Insel Rhodos ist ein Waldbrand außer Kontrolle geraten.
42.000 Menschen sind durch die schweren Erdbeben ums Leben gekommen. Die Überlebenden
Saudi-Arabien rüstet weiter auf und der Nahe Osten.
Social Media ist voll von seinen Videos. Er nennt sich Mahdi.
Es ist die Rede vom Mahdi.
Der Mahdi ruft Oberhäupter zur friedlichen Abdankung
Franziskus gibt nun eine erste Stellungnahme zum Mahdi. Schließen sich dem Mahdi an. Religiöse Oberhäupter halten Krisensitzungen ab.
Es ist die Rede vom Antichristen.
Der Mahdi sei der verheißene Messias.
Christen weltweit sind in
nennt sich
Aufruhr.
Mahdi.
Ist vom Mahdi.
Der Mahdi.
Der Mahdi.
Imam Mahdi. Der Mahdi.
Mahdi.
Mahdi. Every day starts the same. We wake up and immediately grab our cell phones. And if we go to the latest news instead of Instagram and WhatsApp, the same thing awaits us every time. War, protests, crimes, natural disasters. But it doesn't affect us anymore. It has somehow lost its shock. A bomb here, an earthquake there. It's almost kind of normal. But even we are no longer safe from such incidents. The planet is changing and wars are reaching our doorstep. Most recently, the pandemic and its measures kept us in a stranglehold for 2 years. At some point you ask yourself, what is happening to this world right now? Were the Mayas perhaps right about the end of the world after all? But surprisingly, it wasn't just the Mayas who reported the end of the world and the end of time. What is this end of time? Is there any truth to it at all?
Today, when we look at the state of the world from a social perspective, from a financial perspective, we see that the world is really struggling.
The journey of man is a journey full of dangers. Perhaps in the past it was inconceivable that the entire world would perish. But today the world is a small village. It has now become realistic that the whole world will perish, be it through diseases or wars or through other catastrophes.
اما تو این چند سال اخیر مخصوصاً از وقتی که کرونا
In recent years, especially since Corona has spread around the world and people have been struggling with it, they have realized that technology can't do everything and can't fix everything. They've realized that this world has become full of problems.
و فهمیدن که این عالم پر از بلا شده.
Yes, we have a lot of good technology, a lot of scientific development, but from a social perspective, we are really struggling today.
Humans have developed all these technologies and made progress. Nobody denies that. But despite all this, man has not found peace. He is slowly realizing that all these things are not the cure and relief for his pain.
And then when you look at the financial aspect, you find that there are nations out there that are very rich, like the United States, the richest nation on earth. But even in these countries, you have people who are struggling financially. And then when you look at other worlds and how they are being exploited, many times the riches that we have in the first world, it's at the expense of who? Poor, miserable people working by forced labor, earning maybe $1 per day. That's what's happening. This is the financial situation of the world.
This unequal distribution means that on average, every 13 seconds a child under the age of 5 dies as a result of malnutrition. That's 25 children since the beginning of this film. But the consequences of this unequal distribution can also be felt in wealthy countries, not in the form of malnutrition, but in the form of depression and burnout. 1 in 4 people suffer from chronic depression at least once in their lives. More than half of these are young people aged 14. This leads to an average of 90 suicides per hour. 9 people since the beginning of this film. Another factor that contributes significantly to global inequality is the interest rate and banking system. A system in which capital flows from the financially weak to the top of the social hierarchy. It is disturbing to realize that only 1% of the world's population controls almost 2/3 of all global wealth. In contrast, the remaining 99% of people have to share the remaining third. This discrepancy is becoming more dramatic every single year.
Look at the wars. Look at the billions of dollars and the trillions of dollars that are wasted on weapons. That's not a problem? Today we have a problem in Ukraine, right? These Ukrainians are being killed by which weapons? Weapons that these strong nations are producing to kill one another. And then we come as heroes. No, this is an unjust war. We're acting like we're heroes, right? You made those weapons.
At first, they follow this party or that politician. Many people follow just anyone. But if, after a few years, they see something wrong with that person, or something that goes against their own ideas, then they abandon them. At some point, people get fed up with a particular politician and then organize elections, so that a new politician or party comes to power. Then a new party comes in and they realize that this is not what they expected either. In some countries it even gets worse than before. But even if it doesn't get worse, nothing changes. Everything has stayed the same. They get tired of following this and following that. They lose faith in it and realize that through these elections, through all these parties and politicians, nothing changes and everything stays the same.
The world gathers experience in different ways, but each time it arrives at a mirage. But they don't admit it. Some doctors don't admit their mistakes either. They say, it was an experience. Let's have another experience now. Sometimes they don't even admit that. In the same way, the rulers of this world consistently make mistakes.
So there's a lot of good that's in the world. We don't deny that. We're not trying to be pessimistic over here. But honestly, socially, financially, we are struggling.
How did it come to this? Why don't people in power do anything about this suffering? And if they do, why does nothing change? Almost everyone asks themselves these questions at some point, but they have long since been answered. Since the earliest days of mankind, there have been predictions about these global problems. Prophetic messages about the end of the world can be found in the teachings and traditions of every religion and culture, regardless of whether they are polytheistic or monotheistic belief systems. They all describe an end time in which the forces of evil will prevail. A dark world pervaded by evil and injustice. When Jesus was asked by his disciples about the end of time, he replied, "You will hear from wars and war cries. Watch and do not be afraid, for this must happen. But it is not yet the end, for nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines and earthquakes here and there. But all this is the beginning of pains. Then many will fall and will betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and will deceive many. And because disregard for the law will prevail, love will become cold in many hearts.
All the suffering and problems that are currently widespread in our world have already been predicted by our prophet and our saints. That huge problems would arise in the end times. Economic problems, psychological problems, divorces, illnesses. All this is written in our traditions. That everyone who moves away from God will face such problems.
To be precise, the main problem is the governments. All these governments have brought certain benefits to humanity, but 100 times more than these benefits, they have brought problems.
Look at the world today. It's based on rejecting God. It's based on atheism. Our universities, more than ever, they're based on atheism. God is not in the picture anymore. Do whatever you want. You mentioned the rainbow movement, the rainbow flag. Go and do whatever you want. You're free. There is no God in the picture. When you eliminate God from the picture and you try to experiment, you start causing self-destruction. We don't have standards of morality anymore.
Imagine someone who has been locked up in prison since childhood. When someone like that grows up, he cannot understand the meaning and reality of freedom. What does freedom mean? He says, I can walk from this side of my cell to the other. I can scream. I can say what I want. I eat when I want to, and when I don't, I don't. I eat now or in 2 hours. That's what he means by freedom. But what does the person who lives in freedom say? Poor soul, you're imprisoned. Freedom means proclaiming your voice to the world. That is the reality of freedom. Is this example comprehensible?
Over 1300 years ago, the Holy Prophet Muhammad made highly detailed predictions about the present day. At that time, the governments of Muslims will be in the hands of tyrants. Fools will be in power. Women will be rulers, and children will speak on tribunes. At that time, men will look like women, and women will look like men. Women will be seen being praised for their adulterous deeds. Men will support them and will be among the best family men. Women will satisfy their lust with women and men with men. Close relatives of forbidden degree will marry each other, and even if they think it is bad, they would not say anything against it out of fear of the people. Singing girls will appear, and their voices will rise, and they will find a lot of audience. People will regard music as a favorite activity. Chess will be played openly, and wine will be sold openly, and no one will forbid it. Minarets will be erected high, mosques will be decorated with gold like churches and synagogues, tall buildings will be built, women move vehicles of transportation, the rain is not seasonal. Everyone advises what they don't do themselves. Human life becomes a commodity for sale, and bloodshed becomes a frequent and very common thing. This world takes precedence over the hereafter. People oppress their parents and are kind to their friends, yet their hearts are far apart. On the outside, they are like wolves, and on the inside, more rotten than carrion.
Many people think it's good if everyone is dating everyone. Boys, girls, men and men, women and women. That would be freedom. They are just like this prisoner in jail. They've misunderstood freedom. Why? Because they don't know anything about outside. Because they have distanced themselves from spiritual and human values.
They have not yet felt the need for it.